Sorry about coming to you from an echoey hotel room, but we now know more details about the CX-90 from Mazda that I think you're going to be interested in. We know pricing, we know more engine details, legroom and cargo room figures, and we know a lot more information about the plug-in hybrid that's going to be pretty surprising. First up, let's talk price. The base version of the CX-90 ended up being less expensive than I had assumed, $39,595. That puts it right in the line with a lot of the front-wheel drive competition. Now that base version is not going to get you the 340 horsepower 3.3-liter turbocharged inline-six, but it is going to get you a turbocharged inline-six, just with less power, 280 horsepower, 322 pound-feet of torque. That one is still going to have the mild hybrid system on board, which is also a bit of a surprise. Next up in the lineup as far as drivetrains, we get the plug-in hybrid system. This is not in fact going to be a range-topping plug-in hybrid system. It's really going to be slotted right in the middle of the lineup. Versus a comparable 280 horsepower inline-six, the plug-in hybrid system is only going to set you back an extra $4,000. That's pretty surprising since it does give you more horsepower, 323 ponies versus 280 horsepower, and it's going to give you the electric range, which we don't know at this point, but I suspect is probably going to be somewhere around 30 miles of EV range. Also interesting, this is the only 8-seat vehicle in North America that will have a plug. Yes, you will be able to get the plug-in hybrid model as an 8-seat or a 7-seat vehicle, and all of them will have a spare tire, so that's also an interesting twist. This is one of the only 3-row things with a plug that's going to have a spare tire. It's going to be the only one that will seat 8. A Rivian R1S won't seat 8, the Model X and Model Y won't seat 8, and really no major car company out there seems to be planning a plug-in hybrid model with 8 seats, including a minivan for some particular reason. Now about the plug-in hybrid system, again $4,000 more than the 280 horsepower tune. It's going to come in 3 different trim levels. They are subsets of what we find with the base 3.3-liter turbo. It's going to be available in Preferred, Premium, and Premium Plus. Premium Plus is the most expensive model, $56,950. Now, the Premium and Premium Plus models will effectively also be available with the 340 horsepower tune of the engine. That's going to be $56,450 for the Premium model with the more powerful turbo, $59,950 starting for the top-end trim of CX-90, and you can add some additional options onto it. With destination, it's going to get to around $64,000, so definitely a bit on the pricey side. Mazda has also released some additional detail on the mild hybrid system. Again, this is going to be a little bit less mild than some of the competition's mild hybrids, so actually a little bit more like a full hybrid Prius than some of the competition where it can't operate in an EV-only mode. The motor is a little bit bigger than I had thought too. It's a 16.6 horsepower motor, producing 113 pound-feet of torque in all trims. The battery, that is really small though. It's only 1/3 of a kilowatt hour, although Mazda has not said exactly where it's located. They've also said that the all-wheel drive system, as we suspected, is going to be a strong rear power bias, and on the regular tune of the 3.3-liter turbo, you'll get 24 miles per gallon city, 28 on the highway. If you opt for the more powerful hybrid system, I guess we are calling this, then it drops down to 23 city, 28 highway. So pretty decent highway fuel economy. We don't have any combined figure for that just yet. I suspect it'll be somewhere around 24 or 25 miles per gallon. Now, towing figures, a lot of folks had questions about that. Sorry folks, it's not going to top out at 6,000 pounds like many of us had assumed. It's going to top out at 5,000 pounds maximum. The base versions of the CX-90 will get a 3,500 pound standard tow rating, 5,000 pounds maximum when properly equipped. Now, all of the plug-in hybrids are going to get the lower 3,500 pound tow rating. That's probably logical because of the power output from the gasoline engine when it's operating in gasoline-only mode. Now let's dive into the dimensions, because when I first saw the CX-90, we didn't have this information. As many folks expected, it is over 200 inches long, 201.6 inches to be exact. That puts this about the same size as a Grand Highlander and, of course, the Dodge Durango. The Explorer, the Durango, and the Grand Cherokee L are the only other rear-wheel drive options in this segment, so it's logical that size-wise it ends up in the same neighborhood, because if you want a usable 3-row setup and you want room for a rear-wheel drive engine setup in the front, you're going to end up at around 200 inches or over. It's going to be 77.6 inches wide, so a little bit wider than average, actually closer to the Grand Cherokee L than something like a Toyota Highlander. Ground clearance, 8 to 8.1 inches in all the versions, including the plug-in hybrid trim. Also interesting, we're going to get 265 width tires as the narrowest tire on the CX-90, and the widest is going to be 275. So expect excellent handling, expect lots of grip. Of course, the plug-in hybrid is going to be a little on the heavy side. The other specs that some folks might be surprised by, but I kind of expected based on the general profile of the CX-90 and that rear-wheel drive reality, is the combined legroom figure and of course the rear headroom figure as well. We get 111.5 inches of combined legroom in the CX-90. That is right about the same as the Grand Cherokee L for the exact same reason. The Grand Cherokee L was also designed for a long inline six to sit up front, and as a result you have a shorter box behind. This is a little bit more legroom than you'll find in a short Highlander, but you can bet it's probably going to be less than the Grand Highlander, and it's almost exactly the same kind of interior legroom that we find in a Honda Pilot. Keep in mind, of course, the Highlander is 6 inches shorter, so it is going to be easier to fit in some of those tight parking spots. The Grand Highlander is going to be debuting right around the time that you're watching this video. Details are still a little bit sketchy on exactly what we're going to see, but keep all these dimensions in mind. It's probably going to be pretty darn similar. Third row headroom, 36.9 inches is okay, but it is below the Explorer, it's below the new Pilot, the Palisade, the Telluride, the Atlas, and a number of others. We don't have official numbers just yet on the Grand Highlander. That's coming out in a day or so. Cargo room, logically, is also a little bit more limited because of the rear-wheel drive proportions. 14.9 cubic feet behind the third row if you choose the 3-person third row model. That would be the 8-passenger version. If you get the 7-passenger version, it goes up by 1 cubic foot, 15.9 cubic feet, but there's not a great deal of difference between the two. You will still find a much larger cargo area in the Palisade, the Telluride, the Atlas, or of course, that new Pilot. If you want to seat 8 in your new CX-9, there are going to be 4 different trim levels where that will happen. The base version of the plug-in hybrid and the 3 base trims of the low-output inline 6. You can't get 8 seats and 340 horsepower, at least not for the moment. Most of the versions of CX-9 will seat 7 or perhaps 6 passengers, depending on the model you're looking at. If you want a fully decked out CX-90, that's only going to be available as a 6-passenger vehicle because you get a center console and the ventilated seats in the second row, and that does seem to preclude some of their features. A few other interesting tidbits worth noting: the 3-zone automatic climate control appears to be standard, as does adaptive cruise control and keyless go. Also, a power driver seat is standard in every model. But the lower end trims are not going to get the big 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment system that you saw when I was looking at the CX-90. Instead, they're going to get a smaller 10.25-inch screen that is not going to be a touchscreen. Also, the large 12.3-inch LCD instrument cluster is not going to be standard. The other versions are going to get a smaller 7-inch partial LCD cluster. Moving on to the plug-in hybrid, I still don't know fuel economy or range numbers, but we know a bit more detail about the drivetrain. Interestingly, premium fuel is recommended for this model. Again, it's going to function properly on regular unleaded. I had suspected that was due to maybe a high output version of the 2.5-liter engine from Mazda, but in fact, the engine is only going to be producing 189 horsepower, 192 pound-feet of torque. So the rating on that 2.5-liter engine is basically the same as a lot of other Mazdas with that exact same 2.5-liter engine. No turbo there for that plug-in hybrid model. You'll get 323 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque when combined with the onboard electric motor, because the motor is pretty torquey. 199 pound-feet of torque, 173 horsepower. So I suspect that EV-only performance is going to be pretty reasonable as long as that battery has the appropriate state of charge. Now, if you're going up a really long uphill grade, obviously at some point you're going to exhaust the battery and you're just going to be left with 189 horsepower, 192 pound-feet of torque. Although for most around town situations, you're still going to be getting max horsepower, max torque, because the battery is going to hold a residual amount of charge to make sure that performance is still acceptable, even if the battery gauge says 0 miles of EV range. It's still going to give you that level of performance. But if you're really climbing up a long grade, especially with a trailer on the back, that's probably why tow rating drops in the plug-in hybrid. Keep in mind, there is going to be a point where you only end up with about 192 pound-feet of torque. Now, they didn't shrink the gas tank, which is also an interesting twist, so 18.5 gallons back there. I would hope that this model ends up being a little bit more efficient than I had initially suspected. I'm going to guess or maybe hope that it could end up at around 27 miles per gallon because, of course, a plug-in hybrid XC90, which you could see as a competitor to this, gets around 27 miles per gallon in real-world driving. Now, we don't have any range estimates just yet, but we do have some charging specifications, although these are a little bit weird because Mazda is giving us a 20% to 80% charge time, even though this is all level 1 or level 2 charging, not DC fast charging. At any rate, they're saying about an hour and a half on level 2. It's probably going to be more like 3 to 3.5 hours, 0% to 100% charging. The onboard charger appears to be an approximately 6 to 6.5 kilowatt charger. That detail is still left a little open from Mazda. Hopefully we'll get some information on that soon. Be sure and sound off in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this info drop. Also, let me know if you're excited to see the base plug-in hybrid version of the CX-90, because again, this is going to be the only 3-row anything with 8 seats and a plug on sale in North America. At this point, all we have seen is some rumors from some startup companies about possible 8-seat versions in the future. If you want 8 seats and a plug, this is going to be the only thing going. It may not be the roomiest 3rd row or the roomiest 2nd row with 8 people on board, but this will actually have 8 seat belts. Let me know what you think about that, and of course the rest of the information dump. And if you want to build your own CX-90, you can now do that at MazdaUSA.com. Keep in mind, I will be driving the CX-90 very, very soon, hopefully including the plug-in hybrid model, so stay tuned for that video as well. See all of you later.